Not a single member of my family showed up to my wedding, not my parents, not even my best friend. They all chose my sister's engagement party instead. As we cut the cake, my phone lit up with a message from my mom. We need to talk, now. Followed by 43 missed calls. Title pretty much says it all, but buckle up because this story has everything. Family betrayal, gold digging gone catastrophically wrong, and revenge so perfectly executed it should be taught in business schools. This is a long one, but I promise every single word is worth reading. Grab some popcorn. Quick background about me since context absolutely matters for understanding what comes next. I'm Alex, 32 now, but this nuclear explosion happened when I was 29. I'm a construction project manager who clawed my way up from absolutely nothing through pure determination and backbreaking work. Grew up in a solidly middle-class household where my parents constantly preached about working hard and earning everything you get through honest effort. Went to trade school instead of college. Started as a basic laborer making minimum wage. Worked my way through every single position imaginable. Electrical work, plumbing, general contracting, site supervision, quality control. My sister Jessica is 2 years younger and has literally never worked a legitimate day in her entire privileged life. She figured out early that being conventionally attractive and knowing exactly how to manipulate people emotionally gets you much further than actual effort, talent, or developing any real skills. Been bouncing between wealthy boyfriends since high school, always hunting relentlessly for the next financial upgrade and bigger bank account. My parents absolutely loved this pattern because she consistently brought home guys with impressive salaries and prestigious job titles that made them look good socially. I've been with my wife Sarah since we met in a community college evening class 7 years ago. She's a registered nurse who genuinely cares about helping people and works incredibly hard for everything she has earned. We both sacrificed and struggled for years to build what we have today through careful planning and discipline. No handouts, no trust funds, no wealthy relatives writing checks. Just pure determination, honest work, and smart financial decisions. This is the detailed story of how my entire family chose my sister's superficial nonsense over my wedding day, and exactly how I made them regret that decision in ways they never imagined possible. 2 years ago, I was deep in planning my wedding to Sarah. We'd been engaged for 8 months and managed to save up $18,000 for a really nice ceremony through careful budgeting and working extra hours. Nothing extravagant or over the top, but we wanted our special day to be memorable and meaningful for everyone involved. We sent detailed save the dates back in January for our September 15th wedding date. Jessica had been dating this investment banker named Tyler for roughly 6 months at this point. This guy represented everything my parents had ever fantasized about their daughter bringing home. MBA from some prestigious university, drives an expensive BMW that cost more than most people's annual salary, works at a major financial firm downtown, pulling in well over $200,000 annually, plus substantial bonuses. Jessica was already posting these incredibly cringeworthy Instagram photos of them at fancy restaurants with captions like, "When he treats you like the queen you deserve to be," accompanied by crown and diamond emojis and hashtags about living her best life. Here's what you absolutely need to understand about Jessica's position in our family dynamics. She's always been the undisputed golden child, but not in any subtle or understated way. Complete princess treatment from the moment she was born, until now. When I graduated from trade school with honors and landed my first real project management position, my parents said, "That's nice, honey," and immediately changed the subject to something else. When Jessica graduated with her communications degree after changing majors 3 times, they threw an elaborate graduation party and spent months bragging to everyone they knew about their incredibly accomplished daughter. She's also completely lacking in genuine intelligence, but somehow convinced herself she's a master manipulator playing everyone around her like puppets. The type of person who genuinely believes she's playing sophisticated mental chess when she's really just moving checkers around the board without any coherent strategy whatsoever. In July, exactly 2 months before my carefully planned wedding, Jessica announces with great fanfare that Tyler proposed to her during some elaborate rooftop dinner that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Absolutely shocking development, right? But here's where this situation becomes completely insane and my blood pressure starts rising. She immediately starts planning this massive, over-the-top engagement party and deliberately picks September 15th for the date, the exact same day as my wedding that had been planned, announced, and saved for over 8 months. When I confronted her directly about this obvious and deliberate conflict, she just casually shrugged her shoulders and said, "Oh, I didn't even realize there was a problem with that date." But Tyler's parents are flying in from the West Coast, and it's literally the only weekend that works for everyone who actually matters in our lives. Everyone who actually matters. Just let that phrase sink in completely and think about what she was really saying. My mom immediately started with her typical, "Can't you guys somehow work this out between yourselves" routine. Like I should seriously consider rescheduling my wedding that we'd been meticulously planning and saving for just because Princess Jessica suddenly needed that specific date for her engagement party. It's just an engagement party, I explained to them as patiently as possible. Those can happen literally any time throughout the year. Weddings are supposed to be once-in-a-lifetime events that families plan around. Jessica actually rolled her eyes at me like I was being completely unreasonable and dramatic. "Alex, you're being way too emotional about this. It's not just some random party we're throwing together. Tyler's father is a senior partner at his firm, and all their most important clients will be attending this event. This could be absolutely huge for Tyler's career advancement and our future together. Your wedding is just family members and some friends from school. Just family members and friends from school." My wedding was dismissed as just that in her selfish mind. The absolutely worst part of this entire situation? My parents immediately started nodding along enthusiastically, like she was making perfect logical sense instead of being completely selfish. 6 weeks before my wedding date, I started receiving these strange, evasive responses from various family members instead of the enthusiastic confirmations I'd expected. Instead of simply confirming their attendance like normal people do for family weddings, everyone kept saying vague things like, "We'll see how everything develops," or "We're still trying to figure out our schedule situation," which made absolutely no sense. My best man Jake, who I've known since we were in middle school together and considered my closest friend, calls me up one evening and says he needs to discuss something really important with me. His tone was weird and uncomfortable. Turns out Jessica had been continuously texting him behind my back for weeks, trying to convince him that I was being completely unreasonable and selfish about the date conflict situation, and that as my closest friend, he should help persuade me to be more flexible and understanding about the whole thing. She literally attempted to turn my own best man against me during my wedding planning process. The absolute breaking point came when my dad called me directly one evening and said, "Look, son, your sister's engagement party is genuinely important for her future prospects and financial security. Maybe you and Sarah could consider moving your wedding back a few months. You're both already established and stable in your careers." I completely lost my composure and started raising my voice. "Dad, are you actually seriously asking me to postpone my wedding so Jessica can have her engagement party on the same day? It's not just some random party, Alex. This is fundamentally about Jessica's future financial security and social standing. Tyler comes from an excellent family with business connections that could set them up for life financially. What about my life, Dad? What about my future and what matters to me and Sarah?" There was this really long, uncomfortable pause where I could hear him thinking, "You're already doing well for yourself, son. You have your career established. You're financially stable and independent. Jessica needs this opportunity much more than you need some big wedding ceremony." That was the exact moment I realized I was completely and utterly screwed in this family dynamic. In their twisted minds, my sister's shameless social climbing was infinitely more valuable and important than my marriage to the woman I loved. 3 weeks before my wedding date, all the RSVP responses came back in the mail. My parents, Jessica, both sets of grandparents, my uncles and aunts, basically every single member of my extended family, had formally declined my wedding invitation with polite excuses. They were all planning to attend Jessica's engagement party instead of my wedding. Even Jake, my supposed best man and closest friend since childhood, called me just 2 days before the wedding to completely bail on me at the last minute. "I'm really sorry, man, but Jessica makes some valid points about this situation. This could be genuinely important for their future together financially, and your wedding will still be meaningful and special with Sarah's family there to support you." I wanted to reach through the phone and physically shake him until his teeth rattled loose. My wedding day ended up being simultaneously the absolute best and worst day of my entire life up to that point. Sarah looked completely stunning and radiant in her dress. Her family was incredibly welcoming and supportive throughout the entire process, and our real friends who actually showed up made it feel genuinely special and memorable despite everything. But there was this massive, gaping, empty section where my supposedly loving family should have been sitting and celebrating with us during this important milestone. Sarah's father even graciously offered to walk me down the aisle, since my own father had chosen an engagement party over his son's wedding day. When he whispered, "I'm truly honored to call you my son," right before we reached the altar, I almost completely broke down emotionally in front of everyone. During the reception celebration afterward, I kept obsessively checking my phone like some kind of emotional masochist who couldn't stop picking at a wound. Jessica had been posting continuous Instagram stories throughout the entire evening from her party. Elaborate ice sculptures, gourmet catering setups, live musical entertainment, professional photography, the absolute works. She even posted a video of Tyler giving this heartfelt speech about how incredibly blessed and grateful he was to be joining such a wonderful, loving family. My family. The exact same family that couldn't be bothered to attend their son's wedding because they had something better to do. 3 months after my wedding, my grandfather on my mother's side unexpectedly passed away in his sleep. He was 89 years old and had been steadily declining for several months, so the death itself wasn't particularly surprising to anyone. What absolutely shocked everyone and caused major family drama was what happened at the official will reading ceremony. It turned out my grandfather had been paying much closer attention to our family dynamics than anyone had ever realized or given him credit for. He left me his entire house, a gorgeous 4-bedroom craftsman-style home in one of the most desirable neighborhoods in town, professionally appraised at $485,000. He also left me his completely restored vintage car collection consisting of 3 classic Mustangs he'd personally worked on for decades in his garage, plus an $85,000 life insurance policy that I had no idea existed. To Jessica, he left his personal book collection and a $2,500 government savings bond that had been sitting untouched for years. The family attorney read this information out loud with our entire family present in the room, and I watched Jessica's facial expression transform from smug confidence to complete shock to absolute rage in a matter of seconds. Her mouth literally fell open. "That's completely impossible," she declared loudly. "Grandpa always specifically told me I was his favorite granddaughter and that he was saving something special for me." The attorney simply looked down at his official papers without emotion. Mr. Patterson was extremely clear and specific about his final wishes. He actually revised this entire will quite recently before his passing. Later, I discovered through my cousin Amy that my grandfather had updated everything exactly 2 weeks after my wedding took place. The wise old man had been carefully keeping score of who showed up when it truly mattered most to the people they claimed to love. My parents were absolutely livid about this development and kept muttering about unfairness, but there wasn't a single thing they could legally do about it, since everything was properly documented. So suddenly, there I was at 30 years old, married to an absolutely amazing woman who supported my dreams, living in a $485,000 house I owned completely free and clear, with 3 valuable classic cars and substantial cash in the bank. But instead of just passively sitting on this unexpected inheritance, like some people might do, I made the strategic decision to use it as a solid foundation for building something much bigger and more substantial for our future. My first major move was selling one of the Mustangs for $38,000 to a collector who'd been admiring it for years, and using that money plus the life insurance payout to make down payments on 2 well-positioned rental properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods. The real estate market in our area was just starting to heat up significantly, and I managed to get in at exactly the right time before prices exploded. At my regular job, I was already performing well as a project manager and had earned respect from my colleagues. But now I had the confidence and financial cushion necessary to take much bigger professional risks. I started my own construction consulting business during weekends and evenings, specializing in project management services for large-scale commercial renovations and new construction projects. Having a completely paid-off house meant I could take on projects with longer payment schedules and significantly undercut the pricing of more established firms while still maintaining healthy profit margins. Within exactly 18 months of starting my side business, it was generating more income than my regular day job at the construction company. I quit the company on good terms and transitioned to working full-time with my own operation. By the end of year 2, I was clearing approximately $195,000 annually and owned 4 different rental properties that were generating steady passive income every single month without requiring much hands-on management. Sarah and I were genuinely living our absolute dream life together. We traveled extensively to places we'd only read about before, hosted elaborate dinner parties at our beautiful house for friends and colleagues, and started having serious conversations about starting a family in the near future. Meanwhile, my biological family had essentially written me off completely as the ungrateful son who had simply gotten lucky with an inheritance he didn't deserve and probably wouldn't manage properly. What they had absolutely no idea about was that I was meticulously documenting and recording everything that happened involving our family dynamics. Every snide comment made about me behind my back, every family gathering I wasn't invited to participate in, every social media post where Jessica bragged extensively about her luxurious lifestyle while taking subtle but pointed shots at my character and life choices. Because Jessica's engagement to Tyler was starting to show some very serious structural cracks that were getting harder and harder to hide from public view. You see, Tyler had initially assumed he was getting a low-maintenance trophy wife who would be grateful for his financial support and wouldn't make excessive demands. But Jessica is high maintenance to an absolutely extreme degree that borders on delusional. She immediately quit her part-time administrative job, not that she had ever really been working seriously anyway, and expected him to completely fund her entire lifestyle without question or complaint. We're talking about $600 dinners multiple times every single week, shopping sprees that cost more than most people's monthly rent payments, an $85,000 luxury Mercedes SUV for her birthday present that she insisted was practical. Tyler was certainly making decent money in his investment banking position, but Jessica was systematically burning through it much faster than he could possibly earn it, even with his substantial bonuses. And unlike the trust fund babies she had typically dated in the past, Tyler actually had to work extremely hard for every single dollar he earned and understood the value of money. My cousin Amy, who was literally the only family member who still maintained regular contact with me after the wedding fiasco, would periodically give me detailed updates on how Jessica was systematically draining Tyler's savings account and how my parents were getting increasingly worried that their golden goose might be getting tired of being constantly plucked clean. Chapter 5. Cracks in the perfect foundation. By the time I turned 31, my business was absolutely crushing every performance metric imaginable and exceeding my wildest expectations. I'd successfully expanded operations into 3 different regional markets, employed 12 full-time people who I treated well and paid competitive salaries, and was solidly on track to clear $320,000 that year before taxes. Sarah and I purchased a beautiful lake house with cash as our weekend retreat, and were having increasingly serious discussions about starting our family within the next year. Meanwhile, Jessica's supposedly perfect fairy tale life was systematically falling apart, and she was far too clueless and self-absorbed to see the disaster approaching like a freight train. Tyler had started working significantly longer hours and traveling much more frequently for business purposes, which Jessica interpreted as him being incredibly dedicated to securing their financial future together. In actual reality, Amy informed me during our monthly coffee meetings, he was desperately avoiding going home because Jessica had become completely insufferable to live with on a daily basis and would constantly badger him about money. She'd transformed into one of those absolute nightmare fiancés who genuinely believe that wedding planning means spending unlimited amounts of someone else's money without any constraints, limitations, or consideration for financial reality whatsoever. The venue she had decided she absolutely needed for their perfect day cost $55,000 just for the basic space rental fee, not including catering decorations or any other services. Her dream wedding dress carried a $9,500 price tag from some designer boutique. She wanted an elaborate 3-week honeymoon in Europe that would cost approximately $28,000, including first-class flights, luxury hotels, and fine dining experiences. Tyler's parents, who had initially been completely charmed by Jessica's carefully crafted performance during their first meetings, were starting to see through the superficial act she'd been maintaining. At family dinner gatherings, she'd make passive-aggressive comments about how certain people didn't properly understand the importance of investing in relationships and maintaining appropriate social appearances and standing in the community. The breaking point came during Christmas dinner at my parents' house, which I wasn't invited to attend, naturally, since I was now persona non grata. Amy secretly recorded portions of the conversation on her phone and sent me the footage later that evening, knowing I'd want to see what I was missing. Jessica was prominently showing off her engagement ring, 4.5 carats, $45,000 according to her constant bragging on social media, and enthusiastically discussing elaborate wedding plans in excruciating detail when Tyler's mother asked what seemed like an innocent question. What kind of work does Jessica do professionally these days? Complete and total silence filled the dining room. You could hear a pin drop. Then Jessica laughed dismissively and said, "Oh, I'm currently between career opportunities right now while I focus on our relationship. Tyler and I mutually decided it would be much better for me to focus entirely on planning our life together rather than getting distracted by some meaningless job." Tyler's facial expression in that video was absolutely priceless and worth watching multiple times. You could literally see the exact moment he realized his fiancée had just openly admitted to being a professional gold digger directly in front of his parents and extended family. That was precisely when I knew it was the perfect time to execute the plan I'd been carefully developing over the past several months. Jessica's wedding was officially scheduled for June 12th, exactly 2 years after my own modest celebration. Unlike my carefully budgeted ceremony that focused on meaning over materialism, this was going to be a $130,000 spectacular extravaganza, funded entirely by Tyler and his increasingly concerned family members who were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Through my expanding business network and professional associations, I'd connected with a forensic accountant who specialized in conducting financial investigations for family law cases and divorce proceedings. We developed a genuine friendship through a professional association, and during one of our regular conversations over coffee, I casually mentioned my sister's increasingly problematic financial situation. "Your sister sounds like a real piece of work," he observed thoughtfully, after I described her spending patterns. "Exactly the type of woman who would systematically drain someone's accounts and disappear if she thought she could get away with it without consequences." That particular conversation sparked an idea that would ultimately change everything for everyone involved in this family drama. I began systematically documenting Jessica's spending patterns, using her own proudly posted social media content as evidence. Every expensive dinner she bragged about attending, every elaborate shopping trip she documented with photos, every luxury vacation she photographed and posted online with detailed captions. I created an incredibly detailed spreadsheet tracking her lifestyle costs based entirely on her own evidence and constant bragging about her lavish lifestyle. The numbers were absolutely staggering when compiled together and analyzed objectively. In the 20 months since her engagement began, Jessica had been consistently living a lifestyle that cost approximately $9,200 per month, every single penny funded by Tyler's income and savings, with no contribution from her whatsoever. But here's what made my plan absolutely perfect and virtually foolproof. I'd also been carefully tracking Tyler's career progression through various industry connections and professional contacts in the financial sector. His firm had been struggling significantly with major market changes and regulatory pressures, and there were increasingly serious rumors about substantial layoffs coming soon to cut costs. The big promotion Jessica kept bragging about constantly to justify her excessive spending? It was never going to happen according to my sources. 2 months before the wedding date, I started making carefully calculated strategic moves that would set everything in motion. First, I contacted Tyler's father through legitimate business channels and professional networking. I introduced myself as a fellow professional and mentioned I was genuinely concerned about some troubling industry rumors regarding Tyler's firm's overall financial stability and future prospects in the current market. "Oh, you've heard about the serious troubles at Meridian Capital too?" He responded immediately with obvious concern. "We're getting increasingly worried ourselves about Tyler's situation. He's been extremely secretive about work situations lately, and some things Jessica's been saying definitely don't match what we're hearing from other reliable industry contacts." I planted just enough legitimate concern to get him asking all the right questions without seeming suspicious. Second, I reached out to a guy I knew who worked directly at Tyler's company in a different department. Without ever mentioning my personal connection to Jessica, I asked general questions about the firm's stability since I was supposedly considering some potential business partnerships with them. "Honestly, I'd strongly recommend staying far away from any deals with them," he warned me seriously. "We've had 3 major layoff rounds in the past year alone. The partners are hemorrhaging money rapidly, and Tyler's been on extremely thin ice for months. Word around the office is he'll probably be gone by summer." Everything was falling into place absolutely perfectly, according to my plan. 3 weeks before Jessica's elaborate wedding that she'd been planning obsessively for months, the perfect storm finally hit with devastating force that would change everything. Tyler got laid off completely from his investment banking position. Not just fired for performance issues, his entire division was eliminated as part of massive company restructuring and downsizing to cut costs. His $210,000 annual salary vanished overnight, along with his substantial bonus structure and valuable stock options that Jessica had been counting on. But Jessica had absolutely no idea this catastrophic event had happened, because Tyler was too embarrassed and terrified to tell her the truth about their financial situation. He'd been desperately putting wedding expenses on multiple credit cards for months, frantically hoping to land another comparable position before anyone discovered his real financial situation and the house of cards collapsed. This was my perfect moment to strike decisively and execute the plan I'd been developing. I created a completely anonymous email account and sent Tyler's father a comprehensive analysis of Jessica's documented spending over the past 2 years. I included detailed screenshots of her social media posts, constantly bragging about expensive purchases, luxury restaurant visits, designer shopping sprees, and elaborate vacation trips. The report clearly demonstrated that Jessica had been systematically burning through approximately $165,000 annually of Tyler's money on pure lifestyle expenses and status symbols with no regard for their actual financial situation. I included a carefully worded note saying I was a concerned business associate who thought the family should be fully aware of the financial situation before making any major commitments or investments. Tyler's father immediately forwarded this detailed information to Tyler with an urgent message saying they needed to have an emergency family meeting about Jessica's spending patterns and their growing concerns about the upcoming marriage and financial obligations. Meanwhile, Amy informed me that Tyler's mother had been conducting her own investigation and discovered that Jessica had been actively telling people Tyler was being promoted to partner, completely false, and that they were seriously looking at houses in the $900,000 range, absolutely impossible, given their actual financial situation. The final confrontation happened at what was supposed to be their last wedding planning meeting with vendors. Tyler showed up with both parents and presented Jessica with printed bank statements, clearly showing he'd accumulated $52,000 in credit card debt funding her lifestyle demands. His father presented the comprehensive spending analysis I'd provided them. "Jessica," Tyler said, his voice shaking with emotion and stress, "we need to postpone the wedding indefinitely until we can figure out our financial situation and get back on stable ground." According to Amy, who heard every single detail from my mother afterward, Jessica completely and utterly lost her mind in spectacular fashion. She started screaming about how they absolutely couldn't postpone because everything was already arranged and paid for, with money Tyler didn't actually have. She accused Tyler's parents of being jealous of her success and happiness and said they were deliberately trying to sabotage the wedding because they never thought she was good enough for their precious son. Then Tyler dropped the nuclear bomb that destroyed everything. "Jessica, I lost my job a month ago. We can't afford this wedding. We can't afford your lifestyle. We can't afford anything you've been planning." Jessica's response was pure gold and showed her true character. "Well, then get another job immediately. This is my special day, and I'm absolutely not canceling it because you can't handle your career responsibilities." Tyler walked out immediately. His parents walked out behind him. The wedding planner gathered her materials and left without another word. Just like that, the $130,000 wedding that was supposed to happen in 3 weeks was completely destroyed and over. The aftermath was absolutely beautiful to watch unfold from my safe distance as an outside observer. Jessica had to move back in with my parents because Tyler immediately kicked her out of his apartment and changed the locks. The wedding venue kept the entire $18,000 deposit according to their contract terms. The caterer kept another $9,500 for food that would never be served. Jessica was stuck with a $9,500 wedding dress she'd never wear and approximately $35,000 worth of other deposits and payments that were completely non-refundable according to the contract she'd signed. But the story gets so much better from there, and I was just getting started with my revenge. Within 1 week of the wedding cancellation, Tyler's parents sent Jessica an official legal demand letter for $78,000, representing everything they had invested in the wedding that was now completely lost due to her unreasonable financial expectations and irresponsible behavior. They had receipts for everything. Jessica had exactly $0 to pay this substantial debt because she'd never actually held a legitimate job in her entire adult life and had no savings whatsoever. She tried desperately to get Tyler back with tearful phone calls and apologies, but he'd already started dating a coworker who was a certified financial planner with her own apartment and a fully funded retirement account. My parents, who had enabled Jessica's entitled behavior for years without consequences, suddenly found themselves supporting a 29-year-old daughter with no job, no savings, no boyfriend, and lifestyle expectations they couldn't possibly afford to maintain on their retirement income. That's when the increasingly desperate phone calls to me started coming in regularly, multiple times per day. First, my mom with her guilt-tripping voice. "Alex, I know things have been strained between us lately, but Jessica is really struggling right now and needs family support. Maybe you could help her find a position with one of your business contacts? You know so many successful people now." Straight to voicemail without hesitation. I didn't even listen to the full message. Then my dad, with his authoritative tone, "Son, I know we haven't always agreed on everything, but family is family and we stick together. Jessica made some errors in judgment, but she's learned from this experience. Maybe you could loan her some money to get stabilized and back on her feet?" Voicemail again. I was enjoying the silence. Finally, Jessica herself, calling while crying hysterically. "Alex, I know I made terrible mistakes and hurt you badly. I know I wasn't supportive during your wedding situation, and I'm truly sorry for everything. But I'm your sister, and I desperately need help. Tyler's parents are threatening legal action, and I don't know what to do. Can you please help me get through this difficult time? This particular call I actually decided to answer because I wanted to hear her beg. Hey, Jessica. Oh, thank goodness, Alex. I've been so worried you wouldn't speak to me anymore. Look, I know the wedding date thing got complicated and feelings were hurt, but that's all in the past now. I really need. Stop talking immediately. What? I don't understand. I said stop. Here's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to get a job. A real job where you actually work for money and earn a paycheck. You're going to pay back Tyler's parents every single dollar you owe them. And you're going to accomplish all of this without any assistance from me whatsoever. But Alex, I don't understand why you're being so harsh. We're family. Grandpa left you all that money. You have your successful business. You could easily. Let me stop you right there. Grandpa left me that inheritance because I showed up for his funeral while you were shopping. You know where you were that day? Using Tyler's credit card at the mall. He left me that money because he recognized I'd actually built something meaningful with my life through hard work. That's not fair. I didn't know Grandpa was keeping track of who. Of course you didn't know. You never pay attention to anything that doesn't directly benefit you personally. Just like you didn't pay attention when you deliberately scheduled your engagement party on my wedding day after I'd announced the date months earlier. Long, uncomfortable silence where I could hear her breathing. Look, she said, switching to that manipulative tone she'd perfected since childhood. I know I made some mistakes in the past, but I'm your baby sister. Don't you want me to be happy and successful? You mean don't I want you to be comfortable without earning it? No, Jessica. I genuinely don't want that for you anymore. Please, Alex. I'm literally begging you and swallowing my pride. I'll do anything you ask of me. Here's what you can do. Get a job at a retail store or restaurant or anywhere that will hire someone with no real work experience and no useful skills. Move into a small apartment that you pay for with your own earnings. And maybe in a few years, after you've proven you can function as a responsible adult, we can discuss having a relationship again. But what am I supposed to tell people? All my friends are going to know about Tyler's parents suing me. This is completely humiliating and embarrassing. Welcome to consequences, Jessica. I hear they're quite educational when you finally experience them. I hung up and felt better than I had in years. That conversation happened 10 months ago. Here's where everyone ended up in this story. Jessica eventually found work at a department store in the mall, making $13 per hour folding clothes. She moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment with a roommate and drives a 2010 Honda Civic she bought from a used car lot. Her Instagram went from luxury lifestyle bragging to generic inspirational quotes that nobody believes or engages with. She's been on exactly 4 dates in 10 months, all with guys who definitely cannot and will not fund the lifestyle she used to demand. Most of her old friends stopped associating with her once the money dried up, and she couldn't afford to go out anymore. Tyler landed a position at a smaller firm making about $140,000 and got engaged to the financial planner. They're planning a modest wedding that they're paying for entirely themselves without any family drama. My parents have started reaching out to me again, but only because they need advice about their retirement planning, and they've realized I actually know something about managing money successfully. Funny how that works when they need something. Jake, my former best man, sent me a long, apologetic text last month saying he didn't understand the full situation and asking if we could meet up to talk things through. I never responded and deleted his number. Sarah and I just purchased a second vacation property in Costa Rica and are planning to start trying for our first child next year. My business is projected to clear $425,000 this year, and I'm considering expanding into 2 additional markets. I never gave Jessica a single penny throughout her entire ordeal. Not when Tyler's parents sued her and she had to settle for $40,000 paid over 5 years. Not when she got evicted from her first apartment for missing rent payments. Not when she crashed her car and needed money for repairs and insurance. Every time my parents suggest I should help family during difficult times, I remind them that family is supposed to show up for weddings and important life events. The absolute best part happened last month when Sarah and I attended our friend Mike's wedding at a beautiful venue downtown. Guess who was working as part of the catering staff serving guests? Jessica didn't notice me, but I saw her clearly throughout the evening. Hair pulled back in a regulation ponytail, wearing a black uniform polo shirt and slacks, carrying trays of appetizers to guests celebrating someone else's perfect day while getting paid minimum wage plus tips. Life has an incredible sense of justice and irony sometimes. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't destroying someone's life yourself. Sometimes it's just stepping back and letting them destroy their own life while you build something incredible and watch from a distance.